Okay, so we finally were able to clear out our coconuts, because again, I was just really after the shell. Processing the meat of the coconut and the juice and making milk and all that other kind of stuff, that's a whole nother thing. I was really after the shell, and I have one that I've already processed, which is a coconut shell, and it's been oiled and sanded down and stuff, so it looks a lot different from what we have here from a raw standpoint. Now, in a survival situation, I would presume, and I've never been, so I'm going to say that, I was stuck on a stranded desert island, if you will, with Gilligan and the gang. You know, I would be able to use this just as is, as a scoop, as a cup, as a cap, whatever my imagination can deem. You know, the shell is really, really, really tough, really strong. I would almost argue it might be just as stronger than ceramic in many cases. And this is a previous one that has kind of a nub on here, and we've got the fibers from the husk still on there. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to stylize it a bit. You know, this is an urban setting, so I don't have a bunch of rock. I do have sandpaper, but in a survival situation, I would probably have a lot of volcanic rock or really rough rock, some sea rock and sand that I could shape and craft and smooth down this really tough and durable shell. Again, in a pinch, it works just fine. You avoid the jagged edges and you'll be all right. But if you wanted to make something a little bit more stylized, something a little bit more permanent, then there would be some work involved. So I've got, let's see here, we'll work on this one here, and I've got a piece of Cuckoo here that would actually be able to be napped into a pretty decent arrowhead. The edges are very sharp and flat in that. This coconut shell is very durable. So, you know, it would take me some time if I wanted to round this edge and make it not so jagged. It'd take me some time to kind of sit here and saw this all the way around the edge. I can guarantee you that. Now, if all I had was time, fine, it's something to do. I think that wouldn't be the best use of my energy, you know, provided I have, you know, I don't have enough food or whatnot. So it would definitely be better to abrade the top of this. You know, again, I grew up, you know, wanting to make bows and arrows and spears and stuff in the inner city, and so concrete steps were awesome for that because they were rough, and it was just instinctual to kind of take a stick and just to kind of sharpen it using the stairs or the porch of my grandmother's house or whatever. So therefore I already know that if we had a rough surface, I could abrade this to get this completely smooth and level, relatively level like this one. So I'm saying all that to say I'm just preluding because I'm about to move into a modern tool, and this channel is really about kind of the primitive aspects of things and making things from nothing or bare bones. But I'm also into rustic things, rustic making things, rustic living, if you will, and you know, some prepping type stuff. So you got to be practical, you got to be pragmatic, right? And I don't have the time, energy, or the resources at the moment because I'm providing free content. There's a hint there. Get the donate link if you'd like, to go out and make sure that I can do this completely in a wild setting. I just don't have the luxury to do that. I would know how to do it if I was, but I'm not in that setting. So I'm trying to give those people like me that same sort of thought process on how you would go about processing something like this if you were in a wild setting. So I'm gonna go ahead and speed this up, and I've got a Dremel tool here that I invested in for different little projects and stuff like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to blast through this very tough shell. And I'm gonna, first of all, I'm gonna take a Sharpie and I'm gonna draw my line so I know, so I'm not eyeballing it completely. I can at least make a line or create a line that I can start to cut against and make sure that it's going to be relatively uniform all the way around. And the challenge will be, we'll see if I can keep this consistent, and we'll see if I meet or if I have to fudge it. So all I'm doing is just using this Sharpie to make a line. Again, in a wild situation or primitive situation, I would just abrade it against the sand in a nice stone, rough stone or something, and to figure this out. And no, this won't be completely uniform, but we'll be able to get rid of this rough dip here, which is what we don't want. Okay? So I'm going to take the Dremel tool that I have here, and I'm just going to cut it out. And these are kind of nice little investment, like 30 bucks or whatever, if you're into this sort of thing. And it is a little bit noisy, and it does take a little bit of time. There is some dust. I have a fan blowing above me so that the dust can be kind of whisked away. But this is essentially what we're going to do. Is we're just going to cut this out. We'll take this. So this is pretty much what we get, you know, using a Dremel tool. It'd be better, again, just to abrade it on a rock for a while. But there you go, using modern tools, this is what you get. And I think it's pretty cool, because now we have at least 3 serviceable bowls for different stuff. Maybe a shell game could be going on, or some sort of juggling. I don't know what I'm talking about. But anyways, there you go. I mean, coconuts are definitely a good resource for edibility, medicinal, and definitely utilitarian. And that's scratching the surface a little bit. Okay, so after we've been able to crack open our coconut, I went on ahead and was able to process the coconut shells a little further, and they're quite useful as little bowls, or really anything you can imagine that you'd need. They are watertight, so you can hold water in them and food, whatever. I don't know if necessarily know if they're dishwasher safe. I'm pretty sure they probably are. At any rate, we have some shells that are unprocessed, and you see they still have the fibers on them. They're still kind of rough. They're kind of rough on the inside and stuff. There's a bit of work that needs to go into these, and I've got one that ended up cracking in a way that'll end up being a pretty good scoop, actually. But there's going to be some refinement that needs to be done, and so what I've got here is, of course, some sandpaper, which is, I start off with my my low grit but rough stuff, and then I work to medium, and then I go really fine with it, and you end up getting a really nice, so this one turned out pretty good, really nice kind of texture with this, and it's nice and smooth, and you know, just a little bit of elbow grease to get it working and stuff like that. And then, you know, I make sure after cutting it, I round off the corners really well with the sandpaper as well. That's important. And then I wipe these down with this Butcher Block conditioner, and the Butcher Block conditioner is food grade conditioner for butcher blocks and other wooden tools like wooden spoons, wooden, you know, bowls. Obviously here, this coconut shell. So this is a good thing to get if you are into this sort of thing, or if you just have some old cutting boards that you want to reconstitute. This stuff's pretty good. And then you just, as you kind of look at kind of the structure of some of these, you know, these that have the holes popped out, you know, these could be a nice sift or a sieve, or if you were in a, I could see in a primitive situation on an island and you needed to distill or filter water, if you were able to crack open a coconut and use the shell, you could actually pack this with your filtering material. You know, that would probably be some sort of cloth or cotton, or even the husk itself from the coconut that you crack open. Sand, rocks, grasses, charcoal is essential to get rid of, to really kind of disinfect the water. And then of course you have to boil it after you do filter it, but you might have to run it through a couple of times, your filter. But this, because it's got holes already built in, you can kind of stack one on top of the other in some sort of, you know, I don't know, some sort of braided hanger, or however, whatever contraption you can figure out to suspend these on one on top of the other, each with its own different filtering material. And as the water passes through, it'll end up running out into your finished closed container, and hopefully filtered enough in an extreme situation to be able to drink, or at least you can rock boil. I hope to be able to demo that sometime soon. Basically just heat up rocks and put it in the water until the rocks transfer the heat so that the water actually boils. And then, you know, take the rocks out, of course, let it cool down, and you have potable drinking water. So just off the top, you know, this is just something I just, you know, you can use your imagination of what these shells could be used for. And you know, I've been on Pinterest a little bit looking around, and Pinterest is great for inspiration for that type of stuff like this, and I just see all kinds of stuff, cool stuff. It's like, oh my gosh, I want to try that. But anyways, I don't want to bore you with going through the whole step-by-step of processing these down to something more refined like this one, but just to hopefully give you some ideas as to the next steps. Yeah, definitely check out Pinterest if you want. I do have one, but the link is below. And you know, this is a nice scoop. If only it didn't have the holes in it. And short of cutting it with my little Dremel tool, this broke naturally this way. I probably wouldn't be able to get the shape readily. So I'll take advantage of this and make something cool out of it. So there you go.